A constant in the online LEGO Ninjago community since basically day one has been fanworks. This is due in part to Ninjago as a franchise doing a really good job at lending itself towards this kind of thing. Ninjago is a LEGO theme, and because LEGO's whole model towards making their products is inspiring creativity and experimentation in its customers, Ninjago naturally lends itself really well towards this sort of stuff. We've had so many great Ninjago fanworks over the years, from The Future Is Now to the currently running Web of Masks fanfiction. There's always been some value in Ninjago fanworks. But I think there is one Ninjago fan project that stands above all of the rest as possibly the greatest Ninjago fanwork of all time, solely on the basis of how ambitious it is. This is the AL123 Productions Ninjago series. A series about LEGO ninjas fighting bad guys that spans so long its seasons are in the double digits that's been going for over a decade. Now, you might be thinking that I'm talking about the actual Ninjago series that started in 2011. You would be wrong. I am in fact talking about AO123 Productions' stop-motion Ninjago series, which has been running since October of 2012. That is so long ago. There's probably people watching this video that were born after this first episode came out. This is a Ninjago fan project that has spanned over 12 years at this point and is still running to this day. Now, I feel the need to provide you guys some context here before we talk about this, because as time has went on, the art of the Ninjago stop-motion series has kind of been lost and forgotten. So, during the Masters of Spinjitzu wheel film era, one of the most common types of content you'd see on Ninjago YouTube was the stop-motion series. These would be fan-made sets of Ninjago seasons that represent whoever is making its own take on the Ninjago series. And these were so cool, man. I remember the Day of the Departed era of Ninjago incredibly fondly. And this is for a whole bunch of reasons. The hype for that special was immaculate, the sets were really good, but actually looking back on what came out of Ninjago in the latter half of 2016, there was kind of nothing. So beyond obviously being 12 years old and being really nostalgic for when I was 12 years old, what makes me look back on this era of Ninjago so fondly? I think it's largely due in part to the output of stop-motion creators at that time. And that's something that I think was really good about this genre of YouTube video. When the actual Ninjago series wasn't putting anything out or putting out mediocre or downright bad content, stop-motion animators would come in and pick up the slack somewhat, so there was at least some decent Ninjago content coming out at that time. You know, there was something to enjoy and be looking forward to at basically any given time, even if the actual Ninjago show was either on hiatus or not doing its best. Nowadays though, basically the only good Ninjago stop-motion series that is still running is AL123's one. I mean, you got like Cooper Race Productions, but that's a topic for another day. I think it's kind of a shame that fan-made Ninjago seasons as like a genre of YouTube content kind of died out at the turn of the decade. Like around when the WildBrain era was really starting to kick off and the 2020s had just begun, stop-motion Ninjago series kind of died out. But yeah, Amazing LEGO 123's series was one of the very few that kept going after this. And in case you can't tell, one of my favorite aspects of this series is just the sheer scope of it. Off the top of my head, I can think of very few not just Ninjago fan projects, but fan projects for any media that are this gigantic in scope. Something I love about this series is as it goes on, you can see AL123's growth as a creator happen in basically real time. When you look at like the first episode, for example, there's maybe like 12 frames in this whole thing. It's very... well, there's not much going on. And then you look at a later episode and you have these complex, elaborate fight scenes. And completely original Ninjago seasons with their own stories, themes, and messaging. And it's wild looking at all of that and just thinking, all of this is originated from here.
Episode 1, Rise of the Snakes. I know, since Garmadon was defeated, it's not like we've had any rough fight. I know, yeah. Yeah. Shouldn't you guys be training?
Watching this series start to finish doesn't just count as watching an incredibly fun fan-made Ninjago series, but as you watch this, you're also watching the rise of an independent creator from just being some kid with LEGO minifigures and a camera into making these elaborate and genuinely rewatchable productions. Seeing the gradual improvement in production and writing quality from the start of this series to the current day is really cathartic. As a piece of media, I don't think its first season is particularly like good or rewatchable or anything like that, but I am so glad this still exists, as it does such a good job showing how far this series has come since 2012. In case you can't tell, I'm also stupidly nostalgic for this thing. I first discovered it in 2015 during its Tournament of Elements arc. And whilst this series wasn't my first exposure to stop-motion Ninjago content on the internet, that honor goes to Daniel3020. Where did this guy go? He just vanished out of thin air one day. It was kind of my soft introduction into the Ninjago community. That's right, this series is due in part to blame for you all being stuck with me. I initially majorly got into this community by interacting with people from it through the comment sections of these YouTube videos. Then later expanding out to other stop-motion series like Ninjago Studios and all that, discussing those series and slowly forming friend groups through that. My presence in the internet Ninjago community is what ultimately made me want to start this YouTube channel. So yeah, to say this series has kind of majorly influenced my life would be a bit of an understatement. I want to dedicate the rest of this video to discussing my favorite seasons and installments of AR123's series, because I think these are really good Ninjago stories and deserve more recognition. I've got 4 installments of this series that I think are the absolute highlights of it that I want to shout out today, because I think it's genuinely worth a watch. The first installment we've got here is a movie called War of the Titans. Now, I'm not going to act like this has the best story ever and has the best visuals ever for a fan project. I think this is a pretty flawed movie and there's several things I can point out that are just a bit weird. But it's so fun, dude. If this were an actual piece of Ninjago official media, I would probably be a lot harsher on it, but 1, I'm definitely nostalgic for this thing, and 2, it's just genuinely such a joy to watch, man. Like, before I recorded this section, my plan was to watch 5 minutes of it to kind of try and jog my memory of it, but I ended up just sitting down and watching the entire thing because it's just stupid fun. This movie exists to bridge the gap between AR123's adaptations of Skybound and Day of the Departed, and goes about bridging that gap in the most completely insane way I've ever seen any of these stop-motion animators do it. This movie starts with Nadakhan having established a position of power in Ninjago, only to be immediately mutinied by his crew. He then goes on to recruit the Stone Army as his new enforcers, so the remaining Sky Pirates decide the best course of action is to call on Yang for help, who recruits a giant army of Skulkin, and they just have this massive freeway war of the ninja. Like I said, I'm not sure how I would feel about this as an official piece of Ninjago media, but as stop-motion internet fanfiction, this is so fun, man. It's just such a chaotic piece of Ninjago content. Literally every like 2 minutes or something completely new is thrown at you. And as it goes on, Yang slowly just runs into more and more of the established villain cast from the first 5 seasons of the show, leading to the end where Yang basically has the entire Day of the Departed villain lineup ready to destroy the ninja. Also unrelated, but I'm super nostalgic for this movie, not only because this was just the coolest stuff ever as a kid, but also this came out the day I got my dog, Alfie. He is a very good boy, by the way. So yeah, whilst my nostalgia for this movie and basically every conceivable element possibly surrounding it makes me very biased for it, I still think it's a genuinely really fun piece of Ninjago content that I think is worth giving a look. The next piece of content we have here is the Empire of Madness, the adaptation of Season 12 Prime Empire. Now, I say adaptation very loosely because this changes a lot. I mean, the whole video game aspect from Prime Empire is completely cut here. Every weird bit of video game shenanigans is explained away by the season taking place in the Realm of Madness. Also, as opposed to being the primary antagonist of actual Prime Empire, Unagami serves as a secondary antagonist to Garmadon, which I think works for Unagami. I didn't find Unagami to be an interesting villain in the actual TV show, like, at all. So I think him serving as a secondary threat to someone more interesting is a good move in my opinion. Later on, Unagami does betray Garmadon and become the central villain of the season though, and in this role I think I like him about as much as the show version. I still don't think he's particularly interesting here though, he's very much just kind of a two-dimensional mustache-twirling villain. But I think his whole backstory of getting corrupted by the powers of the Realm of Madness is pretty cool. This is just a really solidly executed, entertaining fan-made season. I would get more into the plot, but there is a lot of twists here, so I don't want to spoil all of them. So if what I've said about this season's story does interest you, I'd recommend just going and checking this one out for yourself. Next up, we have Legacy, and I think as far as AR123 seasons go, this one is a straight-up classic. Of all the seasons from this channel that are adapting pre-established Ninjago stories, this one is far and away the best in my opinion. This one is a kind of weird mix of the Legacy sets from the first half of 2019 and the March of the Oni TV show season. The first half is about the returning villains assembling against the ninja, and then the second half is about a full-on darkness invasion of the land of Ninjago. Wait a second, did this guy predict Crystallized? I think Legacy is a great season. I don't think it's better than March of the Oni at all, really. March of the Oni is the more emotionally compelling piece of media, and has much more interesting themes about choosing to stick with your life and trying to change for the better. But Legacy is just so entertaining, dude. This season chooses to hyper-focus on the Oni and Dragon War aspect of Ninjago's lore. that many feel like could have received more focus in March of the Oni. This season does a really good job at giving you the feel of Ninjago being completely at war and everything being at stake. There's one small arc in the season where some of the Oni almost accidentally caused nuclear Armageddon.
No! You guys saw that, right?
Ronan, get out of there!
Yeah, this season was a banger, dude. This season actually utilizes the powers of the Oni pretty well, fleshes out the balance of good and evil a lot more than the show did. For example, in this continuity, Wu's age is determined by where the balance is at the minute. If you want to take on Ninjago Season 10 that delves way into the Oni and Dragon conflict, as opposed to the personal character-driven story we got in the show, this season is for you. The only other thing I'll say about it, without spoiling everything, is that the ending is pretty interesting. The last season we have here is the Eternal Flame, and as far as fan-made Ninjago stories go, this one is so good. In 2017, when the Ninjago movie was coming out, it left stop-motion animators pretty stumped as to what to do. Some tried to integrate plot elements of the Ninjago movie into their own storylines. Some just did movie content for a bit. And others just said, you know what, screw it, and decided to make custom original Ninjago seasons. I think this time period was the peak of Ninjago stop-motion content on YouTube. Sure, production values and animation would definitely get better as time went on, but as far as just quality content in terms of concept and writing and stuff, yeah, this was the peak. The Eternal Flame asks the question on every single Ninjago fan's mind since 2015. What would happen if after the Cursed Realm was destroyed in the Possession arc, it was replaced with Hell from the Bible? And then the ninja go there! Yes, that is the actual concept of this season, and it works surprisingly well. This season is genuinely very thematically rich, with a pretty poignant message at the end about traditionalism versus progress. The villains of this season, even if I still don't know half of their names to this day, are super engaging. Arrakore and the samurai character in particular are standouts for me. The visuals and the action set pieces are all really great. This is just an absolute banger of a fan-made season. I don't want to give too much of an analysis of it because I know not many of you have seen it and I want you to actually watch it and appreciate it. But this is really good. If you're going to watch just one of the things I've recommended on this list, watch the Eternal Flame. It is great. What I find so wild about AO123's series is that I've just spent all of this time explaining installments of it to you, and I haven't even covered a quarter of what this series has to offer. I think just for the sheer amount of content this series has put out over the 11 plus years it's been running, I think it's very fair to call this the most ambitious Ninjago fan project of all time. In terms of sheer scope and the amount of time it's been being worked on for, I think the only thing AO123's series can really be compared to at this point is the official Ninjago show itself. And really, when you're making a fan work, is that not the ultimate achievement?